Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Hardy. I'm Professor of Communications at the London College of Communication, part of the University of the Arts London. I'd like to welcome all of you who are joining us today for the first time, and welcome back those who have attended previous events. Today's event is a talk and discussion with Andrew Cantor, the Global CEO of the Branded Content Marketing Association. This is part of a series of events organized by the Branded Content Research Hub. It began with a talk by me in February on my book, Branded Content, The Fateful Merging of Media and Marketing, followed by a talk by Dr. Susie Camis on her book, Branding Diversity. We had a panel event on influencer marketing in March, and after Andrew's talk today, we have a final event in the series, which you'll see on the screen on the 10th of May with Dr. Maria Benito. Maria completed her PhD on branded content, which I had the pleasure of examining, and she'll be talking about her work in that thesis and beyond, examining branded content short films, including those by the Barcelona Beer Estrella Dram. I just want to say a few words about our work before introducing Andrew, not least because we're celebrating big news. So our Branded Content Research Hub had its origins in a project funded by the UK Research Council, the Arts and Humanities Research Council, in 2016, which established an international academic network. We continued that work following my move to the University of the Arts London, and this is now housed under the Branded Content Research Hub, bringing together academics, industry, and civil society. And we've relaunched, you'll see at the bottom of this screen, our Branded Content Research Network and mailing list. And I encourage you, if you aren't a member, please do contact me by email to join that, because that's bringing together academics across 5 continents so far, everyone with an interest in exploring branded content practices. The news I mentioned is that we have just won a major research grant funded by one of the UK research councils, the Economic and Social Research Council, for a project that will investigate branded content governance, the processes by which rules about conduct and informing conduct covering branded content and influencer marketing are made. And that work's going to span North America, the UK, the European Union, and Australia, with deeper dives into practices and arrangements in the UK and Spain. Our industry partners include the Branded Content Marketing Association. So I'm delighted that so shortly after winning the award, we have our event for you today. The BCMA, together with the Content Marketing Association and online publication Open Democracy. We've got many aims for this project, but they certainly include to try to spread benefits and add value across our network, to support students at all levels, and to support academics at all stages from PhD to early career. So do join the network. We will be keeping everyone informed, and we really are committed to making this, a flagship project in terms of spreading and supporting others, as well as continuing our work. So I'm really delighted about that. On to Andrew. It's my great pleasure to introduce Andrew Cantor. Sorry, I should just say we are recording this session, and we'll be putting up this talk and all the other talks in the series onto the Hub site. And also for housekeeping, I'll say that during Andrew's talk, please do use the Q&A function. Ask a question as it occurs to you as Andrew's speaking, and we'll take all those for a Q&A session and discussion after he's finished. So I met Andrew when he agreed in response to a letter to meet me back in 2015. And that was the catalyst for years of very generous support and collaboration with him and with the BCMA since, that's involved training, events, research and discussion, right up to current projects, including one in which we're producing a report and survey on the branded content industry in the UK currently. Also, incidentally, we heard the good news that we have a collaborative doctoral award, and Andrew's going to be one of the people co-supervising a funded PhD examining cause-related marketing and brand activism. And just to say, one of the things I'm going to be doing is sort of talking about that process to try and help others, because we know how vital it is to extend the opportunities to carry out research for those who are often put off inevitably by the high costs of doing so. So this kind of route of funded PhD research is really, really vital, and I'm delighted we have that success as well. The Branded Content Marketing Association was created in 2003, initially as a UK organisation bringing together media and marketing agencies who were involved in what's really this current phase of brands making and sponsoring content across the media. And I think it's fair to say right from the start, a strong focus on video production, which Andrew will reflect. Andrew himself has worked in marketing for over 25 years. When I first met him, he'd just come from advising the recently formed Women's Party on its communication strategy. And he worked in particular in media planning and buying, which was one of the parts of the advertising industry that first recognized and developed the potential of branded content. In his current role, he's undoubtedly a top billing speaker at international conferences, a judge of branded content. So we're very pleased and very lucky to have him here to speak to you today. I just want to mention finally that Andrew has sponsored and championed work by the BCMA, including setting up a diversity group that's both reviewing diversity within the organization and seeking ways to promote content creation and best practices on diversity, equality, and inclusion across the industries, the branded content and influencer marketing industries. And he's also someone I know is very passionate about education and training. So I want to queue up for those of you listening, particularly students, that these are really vital topics in relation to the changes that need to come across the advertising and marketing industry. And I hope we'll have a really interesting discussion about those too. But first, it's my great pleasure to invite Andrew to speak to you about the great content revolution. Andrew.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that fantastic introduction. And I just want to say that, first of all, congratulations on getting that amazing award. And I'm delighted to be here today because, working with you over the years, has really added a huge amount of value to the BCMA. And I really want to continue that. So it's amazing. It's been an amazing journey, but lots more exciting and interesting things to come. So yeah, thank you. I've been involved with the BCMA pretty much since it started as a founding member. And really, when I look back and think about what we've achieved over the last almost 20 years, is really fantastic. And I'm super proud of what we've done. Certainly, in terms of the branded content side of the business. And also now we've moved in the last couple of years into influencer marketing. So I'm going to sort of just give you a bit of an overview, a bit more of a flavor. I know Jonathan has given you sort of a very brief introduction there, but I really wanted to, give you a bit more of an overview of what the BCMA does in terms of representing globally the community involved in branded content and influencer marketing. And as Jonathan said, founded in 2003 in London, we've set, I think, a lot of the industry standards for best practice, which is really still at the heart of what we do. We've commissioned research over the years and will continue to do that. And also we've measured the effectiveness, which is really one of the critical aspects of any media and marketing spend. And having worked, as Jonathan said, in marketing communications for a long time and working with lots and lots of brands, the first question is, what is the payback? What are we going to achieve in terms of this investment? I think also one of our unique selling points really is, for BCMA members is that we're a very connected global organization right across the whole ecosystem of branded content. And that's really down to the people involved. You know, we're an organization that has chapters all across the world, from the USA down to India and pretty much everywhere in between. And that's down to the amazing people that run our organization in their own particular markets. And this year, we're going to also be looking to open up in Mexico and Turkey, and latterly looking to push out further into Asia. But it's amazing to have such a diverse board panel of chapter heads that allows us to understand what's going on at any particular time in any particular market. So what do we do for our members? It's really about three elements: promotion, supporting, and education. I think we mentioned that earlier. We promote through best practice, we support through our active and powerful community, and we educate with partners such as yourselves, the UAL, and other universities right across the world, developing themes and CPD accredited courses, which is really at the heart of what we do. And really, you can judge us by the company you keep. You know, our membership is all about global brands like Red Bull, Best Buy, PepsiCo. You know, you've got some amazing brands like Unilever as well. We work with lots of agencies. We work with lots of platforms like TikTok and Freedom Media, which is a really interesting social platform, really empowering women, and lots of really interesting organizations. And as I say, if we're covering 14 different markets, we've got a really diverse nature in terms of our clients and our members. So when we look back over the years and look at the history of branded content, it's nothing new, but it was really always driven by necessity, going right back to the 1800s, the late 1890s, when John Deere, the agricultural company, produced their first magazine, The Furrow, which really was looking at the issues around agriculture in those days, but it also carried ads and pieces about agricultural machinery, which John Deere would sell you. The Michelin Guide started in 1900. The Michelin brothers realized that if you're going to go to all these amazing places that are detailed in the book, what are you going to do? You're going to drive there and you're going to need tires. Hovis, that traditional brand that makes fantastic or made fantastic bread products, they were all about being healthy. So they used to produce all these cycle maps, pretty much 100 years ago, to keep people healthy. If we fast forward to today, those are still relevant, they're still being produced. And I think it's testament to the fact that the products we're talking about still have a relevance today, whether that's through Hovis and their sponsorship of Victoria Pendleton, who was a cyclist. It kind of goes back to their traditions. Again, this is a really interesting area that you can develop through an amazing branded content strategy. So we obviously look at the world of branded content right across the board, and if we're going to show people how to do great branded content and best practice, we realized that we had to have a definition of what branded content is. So we worked with our partners at Ipsos Mori, who are our global research partner, and also our partners at the Oxford Brookes University Business School. And we talked to lots of experts across the industry. This is a few years ago now, and they came up with a managerial definition, which was that branded content is any output that's fully or partly funded, or at least endorsed by the legal owner of the brand, which promotes the owner's brand values, makes audiences choose to engage with the brand based on a pull logic due to its entertainment, information, and/or educational value. Now, the key element there is the fact that people go out and seek out the content. They're not interrupted by the content. And that's the critical difference between advertising and content, branded content. we can come on and talk about that in a little bit more detail later. But I want to show you some examples across the years of some of the brands that have been using content at the heart of their campaigns. So have a think, have a look at the video, and see how many brands you can spot.
Don't you know, we're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, we're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. While they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution. It sounds whisper. Poor people gonna rise up and get their share. Poor people gonna rise up and take what's theirs. Don't you know you better run, 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 run. Oh, I said you better run, 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 run. 'Cause finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution. Yes, finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution. Oh no, talking about a revolution. Oh, while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. And finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution. Yes, finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution. Oh no, talking about a revolution. Oh no, talking about a revolution. Oh no.
Okay, so how many of those brands did you get? If I was standing on stage, I'd probably ask you to shout them all out, but given we're not in that mode, I will tell you those brands. Hopefully you would have recognized some of them, ranging from Procter & Gamble back in the 50s, that was, the guiding light programs, with Unilever and Dove, always P&G, we've seen that, Prada, Lego, Johnny Walker, Waitrose. I mean, these are huge brands. And, you know, to me, looking back, you know, the BMW film series was really that sort of pivotal moment for me when I realized, you know, BMW put $25 million from their above the line into branded content to make the BMW film series. And so I thought, well, if BMW are doing it, there must be something in it. So really interesting to see that. But if we look at why we're doing all this branded content, you know, it's all about the fact that brands realized that they needed to look at a different way to engage their customers. And it's really part of pretty much, you know, the majority of the marketing mix for most brands now. And also when you look at the way that influencer marketing is now coming of age, if you like, with the return on investment of over 5 times, it's really coming to the forefront. But I think also the interesting point there is to say, you know, being part of a global organization is that we know that different areas, parts, regions of the world are adopting branded content at a different stages. So, you know, it's really important to understand that. I know I've got about 60 seconds to do this chart. I probably won't need all that time, but when you look at what happens in an internet minute, I'm sure you guys must have seen this kind of analysis chart. we know it's difficult for brands to stand out and cut through from the clutter. I mean, this goes back many years, you know, when we went from analog to digital, we went from, you know, 4 channels to 400 channels on TV. You know, these are the way that, you know, media and communication changes over time. And really, it's about the fact that, you know, no one wants to be interrupted by advertising messages. When we really think about we've all got very busy lives, but we need to adapt to a new normal and have you know, focus on that strong narrative. So really, it's about brands that need to entertain and engage. Not bad. I've got 2 seconds to go. There we go. So why do we need to? Well, you know, and we looked at an internet minute. In an internet hour, there's a huge amount of content that's generated in that time. And this is a figure that comes from our global research partners, Ipsos Mori. But thinking about that in terms of what that kind of relates to in terms of value, the global branded content market expenditure is around $13 billion, which is a significant amount, and it's only going to go one way. It's only going to grow. And that figure comes from Verizon Media. But we've obviously had a very different time in the last 2 years with the pandemic. And, you know, that really shut down pretty much most major productions. And brands needed to change the way fundamentally that they created their content. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And really that is the catalyst for change, in the fact that having to do something has been an interesting area. I mean, for us as a global organization, we've become much more globally connected because we've had to use technology. But we wanted to understand from our members and the brands that were using content, how are they, you know, adapting to this new world in the pandemic, in the lockdown. So we launched our global lockdown content showcase, and we asked all our chapter heads to nominate their top 5 campaigns, their top you know, productions that have, you know, really been produced during this time. And then we asked all our members to vote. We came up with over 50 campaigns, and then we voted, all our members voted on which ones should be the winners. And we now have a best in class, which is really interesting. And looking at what we saw some of the brands earlier in those examples, how they were doing their content, we've now got some examples of the brands that did produce content during the lockdown. Let's see some of those differences.
Going for you.
Whoa! What? No! Guys, does anyone have my iPad?
Close your eyes, gently deepen your breath.
Babe, your boss is FaceTiming you. Vivian?
This is not good.
Morning.
Good morning.
So, Project Pandora's boxes.
xin'wana lexi nga hi hlasela xi kumeka kun'wana na kun'wanyana swi nga endleka ni vuya ndlwini ni batela na mavabyi. New inspired. Oh my goodness! Oh my God!
Bambini, ci siete? Sì! Eccovi! Avete fatto il tema?
Sì, ho fatto il tema.
Giovanni, esci da là sotto. Pronti?
Wow, deep breath. I always love seeing that. I mean, you know, when you think about how brands, that brand in South Africa, Asupol, which is an insurance brand, and the nurse and her reaction. I mean, that, you know, that's all real. You know, you can't do that with an ad. You know, it's a really interesting. You know, obviously, you know, Lego had to change dramatically. They're not making Lego movies. They're doing stuff when you build at home. You know, you're doing it together. I think, you know, really that really sums up the depth and the breadth of the branded content that was created during that, you know, very challenging, very difficult times. But, you know, it's really interesting the way that those brands you know, took up that challenge, and their agencies and their partners and everyone that was involved. It was extraordinary. Okay, and we can obviously talk about that in the Q&A afterwards if you've got any further questions on that. So I'm now going to spend the sort of next time looking at what the current and future trends are looking like. And I think, you know, the first thing to say is, you know, predicting the future is pretty tricky. I mean, when people ask me that, you know, I say the one thing is guaranteed is you're going to be wrong. So this is a quote, and I use quotes, and I'm sure, you know, you guys do as well. I think this just kind of brings it to life. I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. You may well have heard of this quote before, but this was said by, go on, let's hear you. Who is it? It was Thomas Watson, the CEO of IBM in 1943. Obviously today we know that was, you know, an awfully, you know, terrible prediction. However, you know, you have to put it out there. And I think that, you know, let's bear that in mind when we look at the next few trends that we're looking at. And so what I've got is, you know, just an introduction. So let's look at audio voice activation. The fact that podcasts have grown exponentially, the fact that people are using audio much more now. So then I'll just use an example. I've got a short video of a brand that's used the audio and the voice activation. I won't go through the quote, but that was a quote from Siri, and I'm sure we know that one as well. So let's just have a look at, this is what Discovery Land Rover did for their campaign recently.
Follow the trail of plotters threatening to bring chaos to the country and discover amazing facts about Britain as you go.
But the fact is, in these very caves, where we're standing now, our Mesolithic ancestors made cups and bowls from human skulls.
Well, stay close. I'm getting a bad feeling.
Can you hear her?
Oh, that is a little unsettling. Shh, it's all right, Rover. Good dog.
Can you tell where it's coming from?
Hello? Who's there?
We set out to make the words "Are we there yet?" a thing of the past by creating an immersive mystery drama podcast to entertain the whole family. It's a thrilling series, specially made to be listened to in a car. We wanted to transport families to Land Rover's unique world of adventures, whatever they're driving. Recorded entirely in binaural sound, the podcast plunges you into the heart of the action. We set our story in some of the UK's most extraordinary places, featuring an all-star cast and the UK's leading outdoor experts. Through a unique mix of fact and fiction, we're encouraging families to get out and about to experience the great British outdoors. We kept overt branding to a minimum, instead embedding elements of the car's extraordinary capabilities into the story itself. With the help of a coordinated nationwide radio and family blogger campaign, we've reaffirmed Land Rover's position as the vehicle for adventure. The Discovery Adventures by Land Rover, conceived, written and produced by Mindshare and Cecilia FM.
I think that's a great example where, you know, when you think about the problem they were solving, and the fact is that, you know, it was just really beautifully done. And I think when you listen to that and you close your eyes and it does sort of transport you to those places, I think that was a really, really fantastic example. Let's talk about gaming. We're all pretty much into gamification now, when brands are looking at how they can use gaming as part of their communication strategy. Easier for some more than others. But I think now when you look at the way that smartphones and smart technology has allowed us to play on the move, anytime, any place, anywhere, really, it's not surprising that brands are now looking for this way out. And I think esports is a really interesting area that's going to develop even more for brands over the next couple of years. So this is an example that a brand used it as a betting brand, and we can see how they got on using social and gamification. just a really great way to engage their very difficult to reach audience. I mean, you saw the numbers there, 23 seconds, a time when they're playing the game, and that is what we're dealing with now. The attention span is really not that great now. We talk about the goldfish, it's 8 seconds. Well, you see they got 3 or 4 times that, didn't they? So again, innovative use of a platform, Snap, and using it in a different way. Artificial intelligence, AI, really just splits people's opinions. I think it's one of those ones where it sounds really interesting, and actually, Watson, as in IBM Watson, is probably one of the greatest examples of artificial intelligence. I think it has its uses. I think it has a place. Still, I think the jury's out, not entirely sure where that place is. I think it can be useful. A couple of our brands have experimented with it. And I think when you look at how it could potentially work in the branded content space, there's an example I'm going to show you, which was Lexus, who used artificial intelligence, one of the first brands to use it in a mainstream piece of content. But I think it's about the balance. I think it's about using the technology to then help you to achieve your objective. Don't let it overtake it. Okay, let's see that one. I'm still not 100% sure, and I'd be interested to hear your views when we get into the discussion. But fair play, good for them for trying it out and having a go. I think it's an interesting way of approaching it, but obviously it's about getting that mix between the human and the computer. Talking of humans, Richard Branson, obviously we're all very, very aware of him. I had the privilege of working on one of his campaigns for the business broadband, Virgin Business Broadband. Very interesting personality, to say the least. Very much a disruptor. And, we've seen a lot of those companies now that, the likes of Uber, Airbnb, these are huge billion-dollar companies that, don't have any assets. But they are hugely influential. Even the likes of Netflix has really changed the game in terms of the entertainment space, and all the other streaming platforms as well. And I think, they're using use of content. And I think the one example I'm going to show you is really, really good fun. So have a look at this.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. 'Cause 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 We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandra, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
I know karate, I know jiu-jitsu, I drive like a gangster when I'm coming to see you, see you, see you, see you.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I love that. I think it's just brilliant. I think they just, having a laugh at themselves and really having a dig at companies like Gillette and Wilkinson's. And I think they're doing really, really well. They're an extraordinary company that's having a good time. So I think again it's just finding that right sort of level, finding the right pitch in terms of getting the tone right. And I think when you're looking at their customers, potential customers, it's absolutely spot on. However, there's a serious side to branded content, and no more so than the company Patagonia, the outdoor clothing brand, which is led by Yvonne Chouinard, who is so into this whole purpose-driven marketing. And they take on big organizations, they take on industries. And one of the examples I'm going to show you is a trailer to a film, a 90-minute documentary film that was had a theatrical release in the cinemas about the way that the fishing industry was being mistreated and mishandled. So there's some gruesome shots in here, so just giving you a bit of a warning, a heads up on that. Let's have a look.
Humans have always thought themselves as superior to nature.
Would you like to touch one?
It's got us into a lot of trouble.
We've been stalking salmon since the time of Darwin. We literally knew nothing of evolutionary ecology. We would have been flying blind.
Fish are very complex critters that have evolved in Mother Nature over thousands of years.
How far do we go to manufacture wildness?
We're reversing natural selection. We're devolving these fish.
Soho 7063, no mark, no tag.
We're on a path to where there eventually will be no fish, and we will have spent billions of dollars to get to that point.
It's not working, and you want to do more of what doesn't work?
I was so stupid because when they started fish farming, I thought, oh, hey, this is the solution to everything. It's threatening to kill the original fish.
The wild runs are being exterminated, and the whales will follow the wild fish to extinction.
I do not think that we should be okay with allowing salmon to go extinct on our watch.
Nature's gone. You're viewing this through some Disneyland idea that we can still do all this bad stuff and recover salmon.
Captain on one, what is your emergency?
As the decline of the salmon runs come back, you can see a direct correlation with the decline of us as a people.
If I have a responsibility, it is to say when I see things are wrong with what I love.
We ask that you remove your diver from the water immediately.
And that's the rivers and salmon.
The people want it to be wild. And that's what we're fighting for.
What's the price of an ecosystem? What's its worth?
Pretty powerful stuff. As I say, theatrical release, spent millions on making that content. It's a company that makes outdoor clothing, but they're pretty set on those issues and trying to solve them. Okay, finally coming to the influencer marketing world. Nothing influences people more than a recommendation from a trusted friend. Personal recommendations are the most powerful ways of marketing and selling products. Always have been, probably always will be. And obviously with social media and with digital, that's really exploded. And I think it's really important that we understand, how to harness this power. And that's why we spent the last 18 months, 2 years working very hard on professionalizing influencer marketing industry. We've produced our own best practice guidelines that includes, contracting influencers and the legal side of it and the insurance and indemnity side. So, this is really about how we can help brands to maximize the return on their investment in that respect. So I've got an example. It's from Italy. It's for Nike. And, it really just shows how they used influencers in sport as part of their major campaign.
Tutti dicevano che era assurdo combattere, sognare, ma se non ti fermi davanti a niente, anche un sogno assurdo diventa possibile.
Yeah, a very successful campaign. To me, there has really been a democratization of content. I always think it's better, in terms of show me, don't tell me. I think, showing some examples today hopefully gives you a sort of a feel for how brands have evolved, how they're adapting, how they're developing their content. What are the themes? What are the trends that we're seeing? What's going to be the content of the future? We talked a lot about virtual reality, augmented reality. Have we seen greatness in that area? I don't think so. Will we? Possibly. I think brands need to be brave. They need to show how, they're going to really harness this power, as I said earlier. But they've got to be responsible. Collecting data, data's the new oil, as we all know. It's very, very powerful. But you've got to do it in a meaningful way. Obviously, we've had all the GDPR issues, but I think it's really about making sure that you use that in the right way. You've got to listen to your customers, potential customers, and understand what their needs are. There's a lot more about collaboration, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding. There's a lot of, developments in that area. We've seen a huge growth in voice and podcasts, the influencer marketing world. A lot of people talk about personalization, customization, but it's all about activating the campaigns in the right way, having the right distribution channels. If you're going to disrupt, do it for the right reasons, and make sure your content is engaging, entertaining, and guess what? People will share it. So that's how you amplify your content. And I hope that you've enjoyed the discussion. So in summary, interruptive advertising doesn't have the effectiveness. I think we've seen that over the last few years. People seek out entertaining content. Go back to our definition. They want to pull that content towards them. Brands must adapt and evolve, taking advantage of the new comms landscape. Not all brands are doing it. Majority are. Social media has been the game changer, and influencer marketing will continue to grow exponentially. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. We also have a lot of information and resources at the BCMA if you want to come and visit us at the bcma.info. We've also produced a book, 15 Years of Branded Content Story. We're just about to do one for our 20th anniversary, which is next year. So that will be another branded content story. So thank you very much. Back to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. One of the awful elements of doing these events, and they have an upside. I've just looked through the chat and I'm delighted to see some of my colleagues in other countries who've joined us from Spain, from Switzerland, and from elsewhere. So there's absolutely an upside, but the downside is I'm afraid the applause is silent and virtual.
No problem.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Really insightful and brought us all up to date. I think one reflection I have is it's interesting to reflect on our audience. We have an audience that includes students and academics. And I think all of those will react in very different ways to each element of the presentation. And I'd just like to kind of acknowledge that and invite any contributions. There's issues about brands, about the quality of their campaigns, about where those campaigns take place, about representation, and so on. So you have some analysts in the audience, people really interested in examining those. So I'd like to open that up. We have one question. So just to remind, I'm going to take that in a moment. Thank you very much to Kat for your question. I hope you don't mind, but I mentioned earlier we have the achievement of a collaborative doctoral award, and the questioner is the recipient of that project who's going to be undertaking the project. So I'm really pleased to see a question, but let me invite other people to put a question in the chat. If you can just say quickly kind of who you are and where you come from, and any length of question would be really, really welcome. But while we're waiting, and you just showed the book, Andrew, I think you've spoken very eloquently about emergent trends. So I want to ask you to add to that. But you did edit this book in 2018, 15 Years of Branded Content Story.
Yeah.
So what I'd like you to do is just reflect back on what's now 18 years and just what do you feel have been the key changes over that period as this new industry has come of age? And the future facing question I would like to ask you is that you and I and a number of us essentially are invested in this term and concept. It's a slippery term. We know that from the research that's been carried out. Do you think it's a durable term? Do you think branded content is suitable as a kind of organizing term for this activity? And do you think that will be an organizing term looking ahead over the next 15 years?
Yes, I'd love it if it was, of course. As you say, I have a vested interest. I think what's changed is really the fact that we've had to change. I think the fact is the way that, you know, the pandemic has forced us into areas that I think have been very uncomfortable, if I'm brutally honest. It has been in a very difficult and challenging time for everybody, whether that, you know, personally and in business. And I think when you have to do something, then, you know, it forces you into that place. And I think that is why some of the brands, and I think if you look at the difference between the original reel of the content and how it was all beautifully shot and it was on location, and then how brands had to then change dramatically and pivot into, you know, other areas they'd never even go to. And I think, you know, we could always use that term, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think, you know, we've had to learn very quickly. But I think what has happened is that brands have been able to make major decisions much more quickly than they've had to in the past. They've had to do that out of necessity. So I think that's been one of the key changes. I think also, you know, what's changed is the way that influencer marketing has really developed very, very rapidly. And the fact that a lot more brands are engaging with those content creators or influencers as a much, you know, at a much faster rate. and using them in a much more, I think, sophisticated way. And I think that will continue. I still think branded content is fit for purpose and will be for the next few years. You know, I think it's kind of, everything will become branded content is kind of where I believe it will lead to. Because, as I say, the traditional interruptive advertising, you know, you put your ad blockers on, you know, you fast forward through your ad breaks, you know, people can avoid those those messages. So why wouldn't brands look at using much more engaging content? You know, I always say, you know, brands need to think like they're an Endemol Shine or a Banijay. They're a big, you know, production organization, not, you know, a producer of products and services. So it's a change in the mindset, I think, as much as anything else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great. And just to follow up, are you you were suggesting that there's something around, we could call it like the intimate and the interpersonal that was featuring in the COVID phase, but maybe durable. Maybe that's one. I mean, clearly that's been a component, sometimes a dominant component in traditional advertising, but it's a durable component of the kind of branded content storytelling we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think, you know, advertising, you know, falls into emotional and cognitive, doesn't it? I mean, that's the sort of when we used to look at it in a sort of a marketing context. But I think we've become more connected, more emotional, more through what's happened through the pandemic, because, you know, we're much more connected now. We're much more in a place where we understand. I mean, we talked about diversity and equality. You know, this is, you know, a massive issue. Black Lives Matters, you know, Me Too. You know, this is a world where we've all had to change, and I think that's really positive for everyone. And I think that those discussions, you know, it's interesting. I was at Freedom Media yesterday, and I was talking to them about, you know, they were saying, look, you know, the way that networking has always been favored for the male, it's been dominated in a male sense. You know, it's not really, you know, women haven't really had the right. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting observation. And how can we as a BCMA help to change that? You know, it has to be a level playing field. And I think that's really, really important. And that's something that we always strive towards.
Okay, well, we got a couple of questions, but since you raised it, I'd really like to perhaps just go a bit further on diversity. Tell us a bit more about what's driving the initiative at the moment. But again, just to put another element on this, let's also think of this particularly from the point of view of a student listener to this presentation, someone who wants to join into the industry. I have a very visceral memory of a young Black American student who came up to me after a presentation that included sort of talking heads, the great white men of advertising from the 50s and 60s, and just said, Jonathan, I don't recognize myself in any of that. Am I really welcome? Is there a place for me? So, you know, people take a range of views. Diversity has certainly been massively discussed over the last few years. But what would you say to a young person who is fired up by the videos, wants to join this industry, but wants to be kind of confident of a welcome and the delivery on diversity and inclusion promise? Where are things at?
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent question. And I think I was at that presentation as well, because I had the same issue, question raised in that respect. And it's a really tough one to answer, you know, as a, you know, middle-aged white man, you know, it's a tricky one. But I always have been in a position, very privileged, very, you know, positive to find the right person for the job, regardless. And I think with all what's going on in terms of the discussion around it, I think people now are realizing that this is the way that we need to go forward. So I think tenacity is always, you know, you have to just keep going. You know, that's when I was knocking on doors and, you know, someone just said to me, just learn to love the word no. You know, that was a sort of, you know, immediate reaction, and you just got to keep going, because it's finding that right right organization, the right people, the right we help people to find their place, and I think that's really important. And I think that's something that we've always prided ourselves on doing. We've got a very diverse makeup of our members, of our executive team, of our chapters, of our advisory boards. When we do panels, we make sure they're very they're balanced, and they have it's about hearing different voices. That's always been our mantra, is listening and understanding, and then working with companies that are coming into the organization that want to help us do that, because we can't do everything on our own. So I think we've got to do it collaboratively, and we're doing that as with this project where we've got at the moment with Shannon of the diversity group. So these are all live. Social Disruption, she runs a company, Shannon Walker, who's been fantastic to help us guide us through this area, because it can be a minefield.
Thank you, Andrew. And I'm going to take the questions now, but just to open that out, yes, as you say, Shannon Walker, we were delighted to invite her to join the panel event we held on influencer marketing. And as I say, all those events, once they've been edited and captioned, will be put up on the Hub website. Excellent. But also through you and in discussions with Shannon, we're trying to bring together academics from our network, again, internationally, who have a real interest in tracking diversity policies, good practice and guidance to get involved. So please, anyone who's listening and has an interest in that space, we'll proactively let you know what's happening through the network, but do please get in touch. Okay, enough from us. So can I turn to a great topical question that Kat asks? What impact do you think Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter will have on branded content and brand activism, given his views on free speech? Do you think brands will start to reduce their business with the platform, as over 1,000 did with Facebook under the campaign Stop Hate for Profit? So one of the activist campaigns, very successful in the US, Stop Hate for Profit, taking action on Facebook. So yeah, Musk and beyond.
Fascinating, really is. I did hear this morning that he's put up 12% of Tesla for the to pay for the deal, which might not get accepted. But regardless of that, what's the idea here with him taking over? Yeah, I think some brands will have a massive issue with it, but others won't. And I think that it will find its own level. I think that it's interesting that someone of his stature wants to take that on. I don't know. I think Twitter is, has lost some of its cachet over the years. I mean, let's not forget it's been going for quite some time now. And I think they have some massive issues with people being anonymous. And I think that some brands get very nervous in that environment. So it's a great question. I don't have the absolute answer, but I just think it will be fascinating to see what he does with it. Obviously, he's hugely commercial, so it's going to continue to attract. He wants it to attract ad revenue. Whether it will in the same way will be very interesting to see.
Great, thanks, Andrew. So keep them coming, but we have a question from Ilka. Sorry, let me just bring this into vision. Thank you so much for the presentation, Andrew.
Pleasure.
The engagement levels in Instagram are slowly dying, and brands start shaping their strategy mostly in TikTok. Do you see a shift from platforms in influencer marketing from Meta to TikTok in the future, considering users find it more authentic and the algorithm more friendly for creators? So it's a really interesting question about influencer marketing and platforms, but I like Ilka's emphasis on creators. And you might say something perhaps more broadly. You're a trade body set up for marketers, but in the work you're doing with influencers, you're trying to reach out to creators. and others as well. So perhaps you could.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for the creative community, absolutely. And I think it's another great question. And I think the simple answer is yes. You know, I think that because video has become so powerful, you know, a platform like TikTok is going to take over. I know Instagram, you can do Instagram stories, and obviously they've had to change the way that they've set up because of that. That's a reaction. But I think, you know, TikTok have really captured the imagination right across the board. And I think that they will continue to take share away from the likes of Instagram and other platforms in that respect. And there are new platforms coming into the market as well. So it's not just going to be TikTok. I also think that the whole the audio creativity in audio and podcasting has been fantastic as well. So I think, yes, it you know, it will take it away, but I think there's also new opportunities coming along the way as well.
Okay, great. Let me say, because we don't have questions in there, just a call to my technician. I think we do have the facility to invite anyone who wanted to speak and comment to do so, as well as ask a question. Yeah, I'm getting a yes to that. So it's wonderful to see, as I say, so many people from across the network. On the other hand, a few people have gone, so we don't need to go to 5. We can wrap up too. So let me do a call, because I think rather than continue a conversation between me and Andrew, which we have all the time, let's see what else you would like to ask or comment on. Doesn't have to be a question. As I say, some of these are quite challenging and thought-provoking campaigns. Gambling et al. Would anyone like to ask a question or comment? And maybe Tommaso, if you could put up anyway the last slide I wanted to show, I'll feed in my final remarks to that. Because what I wanted to say, as well as promoting our next and final talk in the series, in which Maria Benito will talk about her PhD research on short form video. Perhaps to cue you up, Andrew, I'd like to ask a final question about video length and format, particularly tracing how things have developed over the period, starting from the BMW short films and others, which kind of inspired the creation of the Branded Content Research, Branded Content Marketing Association, through to the present. Anyway, Maria is a fantastic kind of practitioner turned academic, teacher, working in the whole area of kind of storytelling and effectiveness for short form video. So I really recommend that to you. The other key announcement, and it touches on what I've just been saying about kind of responses to these campaigns, is in the UK. The UK government is currently consulting on the regulation of online advertising with a 1st of June deadline for submissions. And when we held our event on influencer marketing on the 9th of March, it came literally hours after this consultation had been announced. So I'd like to say a couple of things. Firstly, we're planning a follow-up to our event to bring together trade bodies, academics, civil society groups who might want to comment on this consultation, to have a kind of business meeting to see if there's value in exchanging and discussing what we want to say. And there's no doubt people there will be saying very diverse and contradictory proposals across the spectrum, but we think it's really valuable to bring everyone together. So our plan at the moment is to invite people to a meeting on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 25th of May. So if anyone is listening to this who has an interest in the consultation, please go and have a look at it. You can find it on gov.uk, online advertising program consultation, and would like to contribute and come to that meeting, please get in touch with me. And more generally, if you'd like to find out more about the work, everything I've been talking about, or just join the mailing list, I'm sorry, it's a rather slow way around, but you need to email me and I'll just read that out. It's jonathan.j.j ian.hardy@lcc.arts.ac.uk. So just before we wrap up, I think there might be...
No, that was just a question about how to get involved in more events, which I've answered.
Sure.
Now.
So Andrew,
fantastic, thank
but
you.
maybe just to wrap up for you, because I know you've been very close to the evolution of forms of video here. We still have kind of definitional problems of what constitutes short form, but we've seen BMW's 10-minute films, we've seen discussions of TikTok and really micro audio visual. What again would you say have been some of the kind of key trends over the period of the last years, and where's that going?
I mean, I always say if it's good enough, it's long enough, and that's a way that I always look at, what should the length of the content be? I always, when Vine, the 6-second Vine, do you remember them? We had to, get your, I've even seen Mont Blanc do a 1-second branded content piece as well. So, it's crazy. I mean, it can go from 1 second to 90-minute Lego movie, and it's anywhere in between. So I think it's kind of what's the platform, where's the distribution? Think about distribution, then that really sets the boundaries of what your content, the length of your content should be. We've had a great show, the Great Beer Challenge, which was made by one of our members. That was a proper 10-episode series. It was funded by Anheuser-Busch, the beer company. Very successful. As you say, brands are using TikTok more readily now. Videos that are a few seconds long, 10 seconds. It really does depend on who you're targeting. What are you trying to say, and where's it going to be? And I think it's got to be done in that sort of way. Think about the distribution. People don't think about distribution because they think it's a bit dull, but it's not. It's probably one of the most important things you're going to have to think about.
Wonderful. And so maybe finally, just to invite you to say a few words on resources. Again, I'm thinking of a diverse audience. We have some people who teach in this area, some people with students who want to join the industry. So far you've mentioned the Branded Content Marketing Association site itself, which has tremendous resources. Maybe just following on from what you said, you could say a little bit about Branded Content Day, which is also another great repository of material.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also, we're a global organization, so there are specific chapters that have their own websites as well. So Spain, France, Canada. So again, there's links within the BCMA website where you can also access our network around the world as well. So I mean, obviously, we're always looking for new members, so there's an opportunity to join, which then gives you a whole access to an exclusive portal where we have lots and lots of other content, but also we can direct you in a place where you want to get to. And again, that's, people can directly contact me as well. So my details were on the on the presentation, so I think you've got that now, and I'm very happy for you to share that, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so let's wrap up, everyone. Thank you all so much indeed for coming along this afternoon. I know it's still a busy time for so many of us getting back into the swing after Easter. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I mean, working with Andrew has been so valuable, and I'm always seeing that value feeds
likewise
to others and students, and I know he shares that as well. So today was, I hope, a good example of that, and I really hope that's been valuable for you all. And as I say, you don't get the volume, but thank you from me on behalf of everyone.
Thank you very much.
Stay in touch. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Tommaso, for all your help with the technology as well.
Ian says, thank you. Great presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.